Good morning. It's the 6th of November, 2022. I'm here at the palatial home of Judge Irving Winston Andre, PhD, a member of the Superior Court of Ontario, Canada. He's been on the bench now since 2002, so in a sense, this is his 20th year on the bench. But it's also the 30th anniversary of the founding of Pont Casse Press in 1992. And on November 4th, 2022, at the William Dew Auditorium of the University of Toronto, it was announced to the world that the University of Toronto Libraries had enrolled the back catalogue of Pont Casse Press's works on Dominican and Caribbean literature and history into its global digital library. That high honor had much to do with the leadership of Irving Andre in Pont Casse Press. So Irving, I'm going to ask you a few questions. What do you believe, if you were to reflect on this, was the significance of Friday's event in the history of Pont Casse Press and the history of our people in way of literature and history?
Well, the significance probably lies in the fact that at least persons the world over can get a glimpse, can get an opportunity to scrutinize, to read, to reflect, to analyze the works we've produced, which deal with virtually every aspect of Dominican life. They can read historical accounts, they can read about whether it's the political history of the island, its economy, its people, its short stories, its sporting history, its economic history, its leaders from every sphere of life. They now have an opportunity to have a look at this information in a manner which previously was unimaginable. So this, in my view, is the singular importance of this development, courtesy of the University of Toronto.
Irving, let's talk about the foundation of Pont Casse Press in 1992 with one Gabriel Christian. How did that come to be?
Well, it came to be because of our mutual love of history, our belief that our history has a significance which is no less important than that of the history of some of our neighboring islands. We believe, growing up in the 70s, being exposed to some of the existing literature, that quite frankly, more needed to be done to document our history. We also believe that those who will do so are those who've been nurtured in the island, not a stranger who comes, visits the island, develops a love for it, and put pen to paper. So we took upon ourselves the task. And why did we do so? Because, one, we had an academic interest in things related to history. Second, we'd spent hundreds of hours at our library in Roseau, pouring through old works written by colonial authors about the island, which reflected a very Eurocentric perspective. And we felt that we had to alter that because it did not fully capture the experience of our people. We believe that the works that had been written then, although laudable, did not go far enough. We were also fortunate in that we were nursed in the radicalism of the 70s. We were part of a study group, Popular Independence Committee, set up by the Rosie Douglas, and we had certainly engaged in analysis of many of these political writers, whether it's Marx, Engels, and some of our third world theoreticians, Franz Fanon, for example, Walter Rodney. So we had a perspective which at the time was regarded as somewhat radical. Not only that, we honed our skills writing when we founded a newspaper called Vanguard, in which we wrote articles about current problems or current issues in Dominica at the time. We printed it on the then ubiquitous Gestetto machine, and that gave us a bird's eye view of the world of printing or publishing. And need I say, it whetted our appetite.
Were you saying then, Irving, that the fact that you were able to create something the art of creation, the process of creation, inspired in us to believe that we could do something majestic.
No question. I'm not sure about the majestic part, but certainly something worthwhile and something notable. So by the time we left Dominica and blundered into post-secondary institutions, whether in your case in Washington, in my case, University of the West Indies, and by the time I came to the States to do some postgraduate work in history, we were committed to such a degree that every month we made a pilgrimage to the Library of Congress in Washington with one purpose: to research, to copy as many documents on Dominican history we could find. And
Irving, stick a pin in that for a moment, because, as I reflect, we were part of a generation where, under Edward Oliver LeBlanc, who was a social reformer who had expanded the bounds of education, where we had people like Dorothy Levy, recently graduated University of Toronto in '66, Alwyn Bully, who graduated from University of the West Indies. So we had a new cadre of Dominican teachers who had been educated at the university level. So we had a degree of educational achievement by Dominicans, unprecedented in history of the island, certainly the post-colonial history, the post-Columbian history, the history that proceeded after Columbus came to the island. Why is it then, of all those persons who attended high school and went to university, it turns out that we got together and we were able to embark on this press? Why did others not find it fitting? Is this about providential intervention, or is it a question of just personal choice?
well, here's how I personally look at it. That generation, for the most part, of Dominican scholars, many of whom had returned and subsequently left, while they were very much involved in the radical politics of the period, and while many of them wrote articles in little newspaper, in pamphlets such as by, for example, the Movement for Dominica and so on.
The pamphlet called Travail, which is Creole for work.
That's right. But many didn't proceed from that basis. Many did not regard that initial foray into writing and publishing as a mere starting point for greater things. And I think we were quite aware of those limitations. And certainly in my case, that was a motivation to shift the paradigm, to carry the journey one step forward, to move from that initial foray into writing and printing, pamphlets and so on, into the writing of books. And as certainly I gave more exposure at the post-secondary level, then it became apparent to me that, look, certainly with some dedication, commitment, research, and perseverance, that certainly we could definitely make a serious contribution to the writing of Dominican history by embarking on a work of ourselves.
And in '92, you and I, after having graduated from Georgetown University, of course you graduated from you graduated from University of West Indies, were at Hopkins for 2 years. The call went out through your good offices to several other Dominicans who were highly educated, very competent, very capable, to get this book as we approached the 500th anniversary of Columbus's encounter with the Americas. And what was the response?
The response was somewhat lukewarm, to be honest. It was a little disappointing. Some folks basically expressed the view that they were otherwise engaged. Others, before the book was even written, wanted to know about the royalties and so on. And I basically said, look, I respect everybody's view, but with or without the involvement of others, then this project is going to be done and undertaken. So what I did, as you're aware, that I basically came up with a tentative contents page with a number of different chapters. I communicated with you and I asked you if you will write these chapters on these various topics while I do the others. And as the saying goes, the rest was history. We persevered, we toiled, we went through the birthing pains of any type of new baby, so to speak, and I'm happy to say that we were able to to fulfill that mission. And it was a very proud moment was it in Virginia when you traveled?
Yeah, Fredericksburg, Virginia, with Book Crafters Company.
Very much so. When we got the first, how do you say that, shipment of boxed books, and it was celebrated with cheap champagne in Maryland, United States of America.
And Joan, of course, we had the good fortune to have Joan with us. Kathy wasn't able to make it, the kids were young. But Irving, looking back at those 30 years, what do you believe is the importance of this collaborative of the University of Toronto that we're celebrating this weekend?
Well, first of all, it's certainly, insofar as Dominica is concerned, probably the other islands, it's probably the first such collaboration with the University of Toronto. There may be other collaborations with other universities in other countries, but insofar as the University of Toronto is concerned, which has an extremely vast digital library, to be included in that collection, I think is something to be quite proud of. But not only that, it bridges a significant challenge and hurdle that we had: how to increase access to our writings in face of what would have been a significant financial obstacle. And the fact that we could give those books to the university, PDF copies, and the good thing about that is that, at least insofar as my works are concerned, at least I had an opportunity to have edited some of the works before giving it to the University of Toronto, something which was very important to me. But they have enabled us to reach as broad an audience as possible through their vast resources, without any significant outlay of funds, which would have basically exceeded whatever resources that we have. So this is very important to us. It's a culmination of what we've been doing, and hopefully it's not just a destination, but it's the opening of new doors, new vistas of opportunity for our writings. And that's certainly how I see it. Not the end, but hopefully a new beginning.
Irving, as we conclude, let me ask this question about the value of writing Dominica's history from the perspective of those who come from the very breast of the country, but also with a perspective rooted in our role in the independence movement as student activists who sought the improvement of the lot of our people by securing independence from Britain, and focusing on different aspects of our history, which had never been written about. You talk about the sports like cricket and football, what they call in North America soccer, the biographies of our greats, the carnival tragedy of the 1963 fire, those who had served in World War I and World War II, the trade union movement, local politics, the whole upsurge of black consciousness and black power. What value do you believe resides in those efforts we made? And as you assess that value, tell the audience, those who listen to this tape, what was it that allowed us to endure over these past 30 years? What was the character of our relationship as two writers who met when we were teenagers? What was the character of that relationship that made for our success, where we had success?
Well, 30 years is a long time by any stretch of the imagination. I think what assisted us was that, again, we went back so long. We had great affinities, not only our love for the history of the island, but the social milieu from which we came from, and our realization that, look, if we don't do this, it's very unlikely, not impossible, unlikely that others would take up the mantle, would take up this burden or this challenge. We also believe that we had over the years armed ourselves with a body of knowledge, gleaned from both primary and secondary sources, that placed us in an ideal way, in an ideal position to undertake this task. Furthermore, through our respective work situations and so on, we were able to marshal some of our financial resources to write these works. Additionally, we had the support of our partners who were very much involved or very much supportive of our efforts to document this history and to play a role defined by themselves in this development of this body of work. So there were a number of factors: economics, social, familial, a recognition of the significance of what we do, in an understanding that even if today we are not necessarily celebrated in our own country as someone who are making a valiant effort to document our history, but we were buoyed by the realization and belief that somewhere out there at some point in the future, there are those who will certainly look towards these works for a source of information and a source of understanding. So the main thing, as I said, is that relationship capital, however you want to call it, familial capital, economic capital, all of this were brought together, in my view, of a worthy initiative to salvage Dominica's history. So I'm proud that we've played our role in that process. Others will come. Others are coming. And we're happy that at least we have set the stage for others to take our works to the next level.
I mean, I just want to salute you on 30 plus years, and I say plus because we started in the 70s. So if one were to incorporate what we did in the 1970s, it would be beyond the 30-year period. But certainly Pont Casse Press from 92 has blazed the trail, and I've been fortunate to be with you on that journey. You've shown great leadership. I regaled, if you want to say, the crowd on Friday evening by saying to them, you set a fine example. And when you'd call me to inquire of how I was getting along, how I was progressing with my pieces. And on one occasion, Joan picked up the phone, and I said to Joan to tell Irving that I'm not there. She let the cat out of the bag by saying to Irving, Gabriel said he's not there. But, that jocularity aside, the fact is we were able to stay keenly on task and to complete the mission. And the mission, in fact, continues. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and as I said, it's a great ride. I hope it continues, but these days we have to be mindful of the precariousness of life, given what's happening in the world, given the onsets of some very increasingly pervasive medical ailments, and your own progression has been slowed up considerably, given the fact that you're on a perpetual or persistent honeymoon. But hopefully that will also continue, and rather than be an impediment, be a spur to your own creative endeavor.
Thank you, Irving. Thank you, Irving. I just want to say all of that, if I were to be, well, I guess you'll get to ask me a few questions, but certainly God bless us both, God bless our families. One love.
Wonderful.